Oh, I'm very glad to see you again. It's good to be with you. Today, I want to speak with you about Mary Magdalene. She was one of the many women who traveled with Jesus. Others are named Susanna and Joanna, and we're told in Luke 8 that they contributed out of their own means to the work that Jesus and the 12 and the others were doing. I'm a little ticked off by the assumption that everyone seems to make that they weren't part of the ministry team. How do we know that they weren't part of the ministry team? Anyway, uh, I've been reading this book by Alice Matthews titled A Woman Jesus Can Teach. And chapter 12 on Mary Magdalene is right at the end. And what I want to highlight with you today comes out of that chapter, because the New Testament tells us that Mary Magdalene had a rough time before she came to Jesus and became a disciple. Well, there's this old story that she had been a prostitute. There's no New Testament evidence for that. What the New Testament says is that 7 demons came out of her. Well, there are New Testament scholars that talk about demons coming out of someone is a first century way of talking about certain psychological this and that or medical this and that today we would describe in different terms. And, make what you will of these various thoughts. But what I want to emphasize is that she had rough times. She went through rough times before she came to Jesus. And at the beginning of this chapter, Alice Matthews refers to a book titled Women's Ways of Knowing by Mary Blenke, Blythe McVicker Clinchy, Nancy Rule Goldberger, and Jill Matic Tarul. And I don't have the time to read a book on epistemology right now. I hope to read this book maybe by the afternoon. God will land on me with a conviction that I've got to get this and read it. But I looked and found a summary, and it didn't speak what I want to speak. I'm sure I could find so much more of what's real to me if I were to read this book, but I'm going to give you what I've got. What I think happened to Mary when she and Jesus connected was that she experienced for the first time, or the first time in a long time, a profound self-respect. She knew that she was welcomed into the family of God. She was a daughter of God. The Spirit of God, the kingdom of heaven within, was something she knew. The next thing I want to say, drawing on what little I've been able to learn about this book, Women's Ways of Knowing, going on Amazon to see this and looking up this and that quickly, is that as women develop as knowers, they're not so much saluting the authorities around them as coming to value their own intuition. And as they continue to grow as knowers, they start to recognize that their intuition is not perfect. It's improvable. So it seems to me those are lessons that are good for all of us. We all have these basic intuitions. God didn't just create us and throw us out there with a mind to cope with all these dimensions of reality, you know, the spiritual, the mental, the material, without providing some assistance, some support. We have been given the capacity for intuition in all these realms. Intuition about the material realm of cause and effect. Intuition about our moral duty. Intuition about spiritual reality. I could talk about that for a long time, but I'm going to go into the next part. I believe that when Mary Magdalene connected with Jesus, it took her to the next level of finding who she truly was as a soul. Each of us is a soul. I am a soul. I have a body. I have a mind. I am a soul. Now, what is the soul? There are all kinds of ideas out there. I think because, you know, our perception of it in the mind, that's where we become conscious of the soul, is dim. And all right, so this is what I would say about the soul. That the soul is our deeper self, our true self, our inner self. There was a saying that was very popular, some decades back. And it said, please be patient with me. God isn't finished with me yet. Isn't that so? God isn't finished with me yet. We are his creatures, but that creative process is still going on. And that true self of ours that God is continuing to create, I want to say, is the soul. And we can contribute to that growth by making great decisions for the will and way of God. Okay. The next thing I want to say about the soul is that that's our deepest, heartfelt, honest self. When we make one of those really fine decisions, we feel really good. It's in our soul. When we really mess up, we feel, our teeth are clenched, gnashing of teeth. We're weeping and wailing. Just like some of the parables say, when you really realize that you've blown it. In that agony, that's the soul, the self-reflective capacity of the soul. That power to be so honest, to face what we've accomplished and who we really are now with all of our not yets. And another thing about the soul is that it has the power of discerning truth. How cool is that? God answers prayer by giving us an expanded revelation of truth, an enhanced appreciation of beauty, and an augmented concept of goodness. Came across that line many years ago. It stuck with me, and I'm still learning, even this morning, what it means. But another thing I can testify is that the soul is the spirit perceiving part of us. I won't go into the morning's adventure in worship, but I will simply say, take that as a signpost along the way. I give thanks that God created Mary Magdalene, that God brought her and Jesus together for all that they did in cooperation, for the way she responded after Jesus' death and to his resurrection as she received the instructions. Go and tell the apostles. Go and tell. What can you go and tell about divine truth and beauty and goodness? About God, about Jesus. With that question, I leave you.